What's going on, guys? Dan from SSG bringing you another GOAT format deck profile. This time I'm profiling my Bazoo return deck. It's one of my favorite archetypes to play in GOAT format, so let's get right into it. We got the full playset of Bazoo. I'm opting to play the full 3 because it's just a good standalone card on its own. It doesn't need to be OTKing your opponent for it to be a good card. It can sort of just remove 1 or 2 monsters and then beat over something that they have and be a threat that your opponent has to deal with. So I do like playing all 3. Then we have BLS and Chaos Sorcerer, just 2 Chaos Monsters. They help enable your OTKs and also just great standalone cards. But we're not playing too many Light and Dark Monsters, so that's what we can afford is the 2 Chaos Monsters. Then we got the playset of Thunder Dragon. This card's really important in this deck as you can actually cycle through all 3 and fail to find on the last one, so that you can set up some really explosive OTKs with Bazoo. You can remove all 3, return them, and that's not quite 8,000, but it's really close, and this card is really good in this deck. Then we have the playset of Dekoichi. This card just helps you filter, just gets your engine going, helps you find cards, gets a monster in your graveyard. The reason why we're playing 3 is because we just want to slim our deck down, find our power cards, find our returns and our Bazoos, but also because if this thing gets Nobleman, it actually sets us up for a really early return from a different dimension play that can be extremely threatening for our opponent. Having 3 14 attack monsters coming back you can start pushing for OTKs really quickly, and I do like that about the card. We have the 2 Gravekeeper Spy. This just helps get some monsters out of our deck. It fills our grave for Bazoo, gets darks in our grave for the Chaos Monsters, and also it just walls our opponent, especially against the warrior decks. They have a little bit of a hard time dealing with it once it's face up, and it's just a good card. It also can just wall a lot of decks and give us a lot of time to find our OTK pieces and start filtering through our deck. So next we have Magician of Faith, 2 copies. Just kind of standard. We're an OTK deck. We're really linear. We want to be able to grab our power spells back. If we ever resolve like 2 Potted Greeds or 2 Graceful Charities, we're just going to have a lot of cards in our hand, and we're going to be able to do some really nasty things. So we do want to grab our power spells back. Then we have the 1 copy of Magical Merchant. This card's really good in this deck. It sort of fills your grave with monsters to remove with Bazoo and the Chaos Monsters. However, I don't like how it interacts with Gravekeeper Spy and Thunder Dragon, as it sort of disrupts those 2 engines, so I don't want to always open it. I cut it from 2 to 1. I think 1's fine. I don't think you have to necessarily not set this card on turn 1 if you don't have Thunder Dragon or something like that, but I just don't like always opening it and not having a Thunder Dragon or a Spy and getting my other engines going first. So I like this card as a follow-up play that sort of just helps set up the OTK for a future turn. And then next we have the 2 jars, Morphing Jar and Cyber Jar. These cards are just really powerful. We play so many flip effect monsters in our deck that a lot of times these guys are going to resolve. Morphing Jar just helps us flip through our deck really fast, gets monsters in our graveyard to enable OTKs. And then Cyber Jar just enables all sorts of nonsense. I always like to play this card in my combo decks because when this flips over, it just does crazy things, and our deck is always more equipped and suitable to be able to use the cards faster than our opponent does because we're a very linear deck. So we're going to be able to OTK them in the next turn or the turn after that quite frequently. There was one time this actually flipped over and I got like 3 Dekoichi set off of it. It was like, well, that's just game over. All sorts of nonsense happens with this card, and I love it in these type of OTK decks. Next we just have Breaker and Tribe, just kind of staple monsters. Breaker's just super staple in my opinion, and then Tribe can help us get rid of goat tokens that are walling us, things like that. Also just gives us discard fodder for our next 2 guys, which are the big monsters of the deck, 1 Jinzo and 1 D-Mock. Jinzo's really good. If you return this guy and then shut off all your opponent's traps while you're putting 5 monsters into play, they're just dead. They're gonna die. Scapegoat is the only out at that point, and it's just really powerful. And then D-Mock, I like D-Mock a lot in this deck. It can be a brick as well as Jinzo, but D-Mock allows you to return from different dimensions to be a little bit of a value play. Grabbing back something like a Pot of Greed or a Graceful Charity, and then banishing itself in the end phase is just fine. It will just be able to come back from a later return from different dimensions. So although these can be bricks, they're very powerful in the deck, so I do run them. On to the spell cards. We have 2 copies of Knock. This card's just staple. Like, it's just ultra staple right now. So many people are running the Dekoichis, the Dark Mimics, so many cards, and this card just gets rid of them really easy. It also just can help us get through things like Spy and just get our OTKs through. So yeah, and then 2 power cards. We have Plot of Greed, Graceful Charity. No Delinquent Duo on this deck, and the reason being is we don't necessarily need to interact with our opponent as much as make our deck as linear as possible. So I'm not really interested in discarding 2 cards of their hand when I could just be pushing my game plan forward and focusing on getting my engine going. One example of that is playing the card Destruction. This card's just really good. Pitching 2 Thunder Dragons just fills your grave like so quickly and filters through your deck so fast. Get your Demok in the grave or your Jinzo to return later. Just very powerful card, and it focuses on our game plan. Then we have the 2 spell trap removal, Heavy Storm, MST, pretty staple. Then we have Snatch Steal, Premature Burial. Premi's really good. If you discard your Demok, then Premi it back. You can just start doing all sorts of good stuff. And Snatch Steal is very good because it actually can help us OTK out of nowhere. So it doesn't really take much for us to actually OTK our opponent with this card in our hand. It could just be a Bazoo and a return for 2, and that's it. They're dead. Or, you know, a Premi and a Snatch and a Bazoo. Like, there's a lot of ways to kill our opponent. And the reason why I also play 1 copy of Brain Control is for the same reason of Snatch Steal. It's just, you can kind of just kill your opponent out of nowhere. And Brain Control is just really overperformed in that aspect of the deck. Is it just enables OTKs that wouldn't be possible if you didn't have the card in your hand. Another really important reason why I play Brain Control alongside of Snatch Steal, of course, is that it actually can help you unbrick that Jinzo and your Demok. Between these 2 cards and the 2 Gravekeeper Spies, you actually have some outs and enough tribute fodder to get those cards out of your hand and onto the board. Onto the traps. Of course, we got 3 Return from Different Dimension. This card's just extremely powerful. It's our main win condition. There isn't much to say about it. The one thing I will say is that it's a little bit better than Dimension Fusion right now. Dimension Fusion's always faster. However, this card doesn't let your opponent bring back monsters as well from their banished. And with all the Chaos decks running around, I just think this is just a way more consistent way of killing your opponent. So I like to go with that. Then we have the 2 Raigeki Break. Just helps you get rid of Jinzo and Demok and the Thunder Dragons out of your hand. Good point of interaction. It just sort of accelerates your game plan as well as interacts with them, which is really good, and it's the most reactive card in the format, so I like it a lot. Another reactive card is just Ring of Destruction. This card is insane in this deck, and it's just like the Brain Control and Snatch. It's like if you have this card, you can just go for OTKs that wouldn't exist otherwise without you having this card. This is another card in combination with Brain Control and Snatch Steal that can just steal you a game. No pun intended. Card's just really powerful, can enable some really strong plays with Return from Different Dimension and easily kill your opponent, as well as just being a good way to interact with your opponent and stop what they're trying to do. And the last 2 cards are just Mirror Force and Torrential. It's a 40-card deck. Mirror Force and Torrential, just really staple in my opinion. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about the deck. It's probably my favorite archetype in Go format because it's just so powerful. It does something unique than other decks, and so let me know what your favorite Go format archetype is in the comments below. And without further ado, it's Dan V from SSG signing out.